You know, centuries ago, travelers would have crossed a bridge just like this with their horse or maybe in their wagons. Today, this serves as our entrance to the past here at Old Bedford Village. This is the Clacomb Covered Bridge. Covered bridges lasted longer than uncovered bridges because they were protected from the weather, and they provided travelers a place to take shelter from a storm if needed. So this is how we enter our village, and it really immediately starts by taking you right back to a time long ago when our ancestors were working the land and enjoying life with their families. Hello and welcome to Old Bedford Village here in Bedford, Pennsylvania. My name is John Westner and I'm a volunteer with Old Bedford Village. I often am found handling Bedford Village's social media accounts, as well as volunteering when I can for different events and activities. And I have loved this village since I was a young man myself. When I was about 10 years old, I came on a school field trip to Old Bedford Village, and it's just such a magical place. I've loved history all my life, and it's just so remarkable to be able to come here and walk back in time and experience what life would have been like for our ancestors, for the people living here. Our village really represents a time from about 1750 until the turn of the 20th century in different areas of our country. So we hope you enjoy the village. We hope you get to come visit us in person someday. But until you do, we wanted to give you this chance to tour our village, to see some of the sites. We won't be able to get to all of them this way. But we'd like you to be able to get a chance to sort of experience all that Old Bedford Village has to offer. And hopefully this will encourage you to come see us in person when you're able. Our village was built in 1976, or was opened in 1976 for the bicentennial of America, for our nation's 200th birthday, and it features a collection of buildings moved here from throughout Bedford County. So many of the buildings on our site are truly original pieces that were built in the 1700s. We have some 18th century log homes here that have stood for over 200 years at this point, which is pretty remarkable. So we've got these homes that you can walk in and see and smell. It's a multi-sensory experience here when you visit Old Bedford Village, because you have the smell of the fire in the fireplace and the sounds of the blacksmith working in his shop, or the tinsmith working in his shop. So we hope you can come here. We hope you can enjoy this place and enjoy it as much as I do. And if you'd enjoy it even more, you're welcome to volunteer. The village is always looking for help and people that enjoy history to volunteer. We offer many special events throughout the year, including our Civil War reenactment that's normally held every June. Our Wild West weekend is also held in June most years. We've got special activities in the fall season as well. We have Pumpkin Fest for families. We have murder mystery evenings that are always fun, and I enjoy helping out with those very much. We have our candlelit Christmas evenings in the winter season. So the village is a fun place to come to year-round. Our operating season takes us from Memorial Day weekend until Labor Day weekend. And after Labor Day, we go to shortened hours until we're through the fall season. Then we reopen for candlelit Christmas. In the early spring, we welcome thousands of school children from around the area, where we can come give them a hands-on experience and where they can truly learn what it was like 200 years ago living in Western Pennsylvania. So enjoy our journey through the village today as we experience some of what Old Bedford Village is.
We're here in the Biddle House, and this is house number 1 at Old Bedford Village. In the village, most of our houses are named after the families who donated these buildings to our village. When the village was constructed in the mid-1970s, what we did was we found houses from around Bedford County, old log homes. So many of these buildings are original, including this one. Some of the buildings were modern construction that were built to look and feel like they were from centuries earlier. But this building was donated by the Biddle family, and it is kind of our welcoming place. It's our building number 1, so it's the first cabin you come to when you enter the village. Very beautiful building if you look around inside here. We have this fantastic double fireplace where we could, of course, cook, but also warm the home through there. We over here have a metal cooktop on top there, so you could heat things up here as well, just like a stove today. This is a good example of a one-room cabin because in addition to this being our kitchen and our dining room with our table and chairs here, we also have over here our bed in the corner. We have a spinning wheel where we might do some work. You can see the yarns dyed back here that have already been spun, as well as some fabric here that are some threads here that are ready to be spun. This is flax, so that would be spun into linen. And we can see kind of some of those things. So this is, as I said, a one-room cabin. Everything would be in this one place. Over here's some raw flax, in fact, okay, that has not yet been prepared for spinning. So everything would have been done in one area. Here's a desk where they could do some writing or planning. And so we see all of these things around in this one room, and this is your living space. This is where you would be spending all of your time, where you would have been with your family. So this, as I said, again, is kind of your introduction to the village. So it's good that we have all those important features right here. Your tools, your cooking tools would have been made from iron. So whether it's a dipper like that, or a spatula, these would have all been made down at Anderson's blacksmith shop. And you can kind of see how everything would have been organized there. Okay. In our fireplace here, we have what's known as a crane that would swing out, and then you could stir what was in the pot, swing it right back into the fire to continue cooking as we go there. So thank you so much for joining me to tour the Biddle House, and we'll continue on our tour now.
You know, just the act of walking through our village can be very calming and relaxing. It's just so peaceful as you stroll through the village with the Juniata River to one side and our cabins to the other. The Keg Blasco House. The Keg Blasco House was built by combining two portions of two different homes. This is set up as our tailor's shop. Tailors, of course, made clothing. So as we come into the Keg Blasco House, we see here the different fabric samples available. Many people would run their business right out of their home in the early days of America. So especially in a small village like this, there are steps to the upstairs where the sleeping quarters may be. And of course, here might be our kitchen area, our fireplace, and those sorts of things. So this is the Keg Blasco House. This wall would have been added at a later time. So you can see here this home. House number 4 is the Fungaroli House, very large house. But as we go inside here, one of the unique features of this house is that it was built from American chestnut. American chestnut was once widely available here in the colonies. It was one of the most common trees when settlers came that was used for building and for furniture and for all kinds of things. So unfortunately, the American chestnut trees in the early 1900s became subject to a blight, and it cost us all of the chestnut trees in America. There are researchers working for ways to bring that tree back, and hopefully they will be successful. They are trying to crossbreed it with the blight-resistant Chinese chestnut. But here we can have a look around inside the Fungaroli House. So again, another example of a home here in early America, where you would have lived with your family in this kind of small space, but cozy and comfortable. Again, a large fireplace for cooking and also for warmth. Okay, here we have our beautiful church. We call it Christ Church, and we actually rent our church out for weddings and for other events. So if we step inside the church here, our church is based on a church just west of Old Bedford Village in Shellsburg that's known as the Old Union Church. So that's the basis for our church. Oftentimes in an early town like this, your preacher would have been a circuit preacher, someone who would travel from town to town on the countryside and preach to the people. Many times people would select a leader from their community to hold prayer meetings and services when that preacher was not available. But here you see our beautiful church inside. Our church features a wine glass pulpit, which is named due to that wide top over the slender central column kind of gives it the look of a fancy wine glass. Okay. Some stained glass windows and a piano. So many of the things you would expect to find in a church. Okay. And of course, in Pennsylvania, we have the distinction of being the first colony that was founded with religious tolerance, where people of a variety of faiths were allowed to live all in the same colony. William Penn did not set up Pennsylvania for any one religion, even though he was a Quaker. He believed people of all religions could live together, work together, and get along. We're here at the Williams Cabin at Old Bedford Village. This is one of my favorite buildings. This is building number 7, and I just enjoy this building because it really is representative of what life would have been like for an early colonist. This is a very small cabin, but it shows kind of the way the cabin would have been constructed, and it shows what life would have been like. You can, as you step inside here in a moment, you'll be able to imagine living in here with a family with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people or more. So it really gives us an understanding of the lifestyle, the conditions that you were living in. So the Williams Cabin, again, at Bedford Village, is cabin number 7. So when you come here, make sure you look for this one. I also want to show you, before we go inside, let's take a look here at the construction of these cabins. Now, you can see the way here that the logs lock together, the way that they were cut so that they would sit right one on top of the other very nicely. A lot of times we think of log cabins and we think of those rounded edges like the log itself, but here we actually have logs that have been hewn, so they would take a broad axe and go along the side and just kind of cut that into a flatter surface, okay, as they were building that cabin. Then in between the cabins they would put different kinds of things, usually mud, to provide sort of a mortar there that would protect you from the cold, fill those spaces in, keep the cold out. So that's what we see here with our cabin. Okay, let's go inside. Now inside the Williams Cabin, you see again kind of what life was like. This was sort of the main feature of your home. This is your fireplace. This is where you cook. This is how you heat your home. So very, very important part of the construction of the home was building the fireplace. But this was your entire living space. You had one room here. This is where your family would live, where you would eat, where you would sleep. So all of those things would be taking place typically in that one space. Around the room here we see some other things. Maybe a fur drying on the wall that could be used later for a blanket. Or to make leather that you could use then to make clothing from. Some simple dishes and things around as well. But again, very simple furniture, very easily constructed and put together so that you had just what you needed here to survive. So this is a simple log cabin that would have been how many settlers would have started out living here in the wilderness of Bedford County, or really the wilderness anywhere in early America. Here we are in the upstairs of the Williams Cabin. Now this is designed here as a bedroom. You can see very simple, just some basic furniture here. You've got your bed. Now this is a slat bed, but actually a lot of beds were rope beds. They were rope frame beds, and that's actually where we get the saying of sleep tight. At times after you laid on those ropes, they would sag and get loose. So you had to tighten the ropes. And so sleep tight is a way of saying have a good night's sleep, get a good rest, and sleep comfortably, comes from the idea of tightening those ropes in your rope bed. The idea of don't let the bed bugs bite. Now bed bugs are an actual little creature that cause problems nowadays, but back then it had another meaning as well, because these mattresses were filled with straw. So this straw mattress was lumpy and not always very comfortable when we think of a mattress today. But with these straw mattresses, there could be all kinds of little creatures living in there. So sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite are sayings that come from this time period. So the bedroom was a very simple place. It wasn't a place where you spent a lot of time. So you can see it's a little dim in here. We have one window across from me to provide a little bit of light, but most of the time you were here to sleep. You'd bring up your lantern, you'd lay down, you'd blow that lantern out, and you'd go to sleep. So this is the bedroom again at the Williams Cabin, and the upstairs. The upstairs would have been added later. Most cabins were not built with a second story at first, but as time went on and needs changed,
maybe your family grew and things like that, you might have to add a room onto your house or add some more living space onto your house. So this was one way to do that. All right, thank you, and we'll continue on our tour.
Now here's a place I feel right at home. This is the schoolhouse at Old Bedford Village. And since I am a teacher in my modern life, I always like coming to the schoolhouse. So this is the Nisley Schoolhouse. This is one of 2 schoolhouses in the village. But you can see here we have some things on the blackboard. It's actually a recipe for jam from Martha Washington's cookbook. We have an alphabet from 1760 there. Our flag is actually a Civil War era flag, or a flag that's designed to look like then, because it has 37 stars, which is the number of states in the Union at the end of the Civil War time period. Now, schools, this is your classic one-room schoolhouse, so all students in all grades would have been taught here at the same time. The younger students may have been seated closer to the teacher. The older students that could do some work more independently might be seated toward the back of the room, and students would be given their lessons, their readings, their writings. We work on arithmetic. A lot of work was done through recitation, where students would say things out loud, because paper cost money. So you weren't working on paper the way that we are today, in most cases. Students would work on slates, small little chalkboards like this, where the student would do their writing there. Some of the best seats in the house were over here to my left. I don't think you can see it in the video, but this is where our stove is, where our pot-bellied stove is. So in the wintertime, those would be maybe the seats that you wanted, rather than far away from there in the back corner. School would take place usually during the winter months. The reason we have summer vacation today goes back to the early days of education in America. The reason we have summers off is because students were needed at home during planting season in the spring and during harvest season in the fall. So you probably wouldn't be coming back to school until around October, and school would be wrapping up by April or May, because the students would be needed at home to plant and help and then work through the summer and then help harvest those crops again in the fall. So that's the reason our school calendar kind of works the way it does, even in modern times, as it goes back to those older times when children were needed to be home and help their families. So be sure to check out the school, compare and contrast it to your school in your own time, and be sure to take a look at the differences. Of course, you don't want to end up stuck over here. This is the dunce cap, which you may have heard about, but this was your punishment. You would be goofing off or messing around, misbehaving. You might be forced to sit in the corner facing the wall wearing that dunce cap, and basically having to be embarrassed in front of all your classmates. So, and that chair was not comfortable either. So that's a little bit about school. We'll take another look at some school here when we get to our other schoolhouse later today as well. Thanks so much. I'll see you. We're here at the woodworker's shop now at Old Bedford Village, and you can see all manner of tools here. We have drills, we have brace and bits, and we have some different carving tools, draw knives, all kinds of things hanging here. I'm sitting at a jigsaw. It's pedal powered. We have it locked off right now so that it doesn't hurt anybody, but this is how you would run a jigsaw, and you've all probably done jigsaw puzzles before. Well, this is a jigsaw, and that's how you would kind of make one of those puzzles. And of course, there's modern versions of that now as well. But the woodworker shop at Bedford Village is a very popular place as well. We have our woodworkers also make some very cool wooden toys. Okay, we've got this little guy, and this would have been the type of entertainment that young children would have had long ago. Got stuck there a little, so we'll keep him rolling on his way. There he goes. We have these little stacking figures here. It's kind of a fun puzzle. Also kind of hard to do with one hand while I'm filming, but you would see if you could stack those and balance them in different ways. So lots of fun ways to entertain yourselves, little toy animals and things for children to play with. So lots of fun there. Even some puzzles there. We mentioned that idea, that concept. This little guy It's going to slide down there. Okay, so simple wooden toys, lots of fun with those, and the children here enjoy playing with those as they come to the village. This little guy here can do a dance, little puppet kind of. It's called a limberjack. Okay. So many ways to have fun that maybe you never even thought of, that modern children just don't always consider. So lots of fun things to do here at the Woodworkers Shop at Old Bedford Village. This is Hemmings Wood Shop, and I hope you visit when you come. Thanks so much. This is our tavern here at Old Bedford Village. This is the Pendergrass Tavern. Due to its location along Forbes Road, taverns were very popular in early Bedford County. Taverns offered travelers a place to rest. They could get a room for the night, or they could even eat a warm meal and have a drink, talk to people nearby as well. So when you come to Bedford Village, you could join or step inside the Pendergrass Tavern. We have some snacks and beverages in there for you. Hope you can check that out when you're here. Here we have our bakery at the village, one of the most popular places around because of our delicious fresh baked cookies. You can try our signature cookie, the Snickerdoodle, or maybe a chocolate chip or molasses cookie. Oatmeal raisin cookie might be more your taste. But no matter what you choose, we promise it'll be delicious. Now, baking in colonial times involved a lot of work. Bread would have to be baked daily. For settlers deep in the wilderness, you'd have to grind your own flour, wheat, rye, or corn by hand. As communities grew, you might have a mill nearby where you could take your grain and have it ground for you. You'd have to prepare the dough, allow it to rise, and then bake it maybe in a Dutch oven, or maybe you had a bread oven in your home as well. Sweets were typically used for special occasions. White sugar was very rare in this area because it was grown in tropical areas. So what was used instead in a lot of cases to sweeten things were maple sugars or honey. So there's natural sweeteners that we do have around here. So make sure you stop in the bakery, try one of our treats. Let us know what your favorite is. A little bit out of place, but this is our Anderson Victorian house. And the Victorian house here represents a time in the later 1800s during that Victorian era that refers to the reign of Queen Victoria, which lasted from 1837 to 1901. During that time, the influence of the middle class grew. The wealthy began to assert their wealth during the Second Industrial Revolution. Factory-produced items were starting to make life easier. Towns were growing. So we see the fancy aspects of this house that reflect all of those things. So this is our other school building here at Bedford Village. This is called the 8 Square School. And this is a school actually from not far from here. It was actually used as a school, I believe through the 1920s. And it's called the 8 Square School because there are 8 square walls that make up this building. It's a very unique style, very interesting style. One of the more unique buildings we have here at the village. So let's take a look inside of the 8 Square School. Let's go to class. So right away, one of the very nice features about this building, about this style of construction, is that our stove can sit right in the middle. And that's going to warm the building much more evenly than what we saw at our Knisley Schoolhouse, where the stove was off in one corner of the room. So this provides for nice even heating around the building. In many cases, when students entered, the gentlemen would have been seated on one side and the ladies on the other. Once again, you had students of all ages being educated in this same building. So what would actually happen is the older students could sit up here with their backs actually to the teacher and work on these desks that were attached to the wall. Younger students that couldn't read or write yet, they would be seated down front on these benches. So it worked well for everybody. It's hard for us today to imagine what it must have been like to attend a school that really went from first grade up until high school. But it was very well organized. The teachers at that time had a good plan and a good system in place, and that was how education worked. Another feature of this building that makes it a very good design, very good structure, is that these 8 walls allow us to fit more windows in the building. So we have windows on almost every wall. And in reality, probably even the back wall would have had a window at one time. Now we need that as our emergency exit, so it's been modified to allow for that. But you have light coming in from all sides, which gives you more light to work with. It makes it a nice, welcoming environment and easy to see your studies. So this is our 8-square school. Be sure to check it out when you visit Old Bedford Village soon. Thanks so much. As we stroll down the other side of the street here at Bedford Village, we have some of our shops, some of our trade shops, like the candle maker's shop and the apothecary. Our next stop today is the chandler's shop. And this is normally, next to the bakery, one of the best smelling places in the village. That wouldn't have always been the case 200 years ago. Candle making and soap making, because soap and candles were made often together, would have been considered a rather dirty job. And a rather smelly job, because a lot of the times the candles were made from rendered animal fat called tallow. But here we have a candle maker shop. Now, in many cases, people made their own candles at home. They heated up their animal fat, they'd melt that down, or if they were fortunate, they maybe had some beeswax that they could work with as well. So they'd take that wax, they'd dip the wick in the pot, and when they had dipped it enough, you'd have to dip, let it cool a little bit so that it wouldn't just stay hot and run off the wick. So you'd dip, you'd let it cool, then you'd dip again, let it cool again, and eventually you had a candle. You would just keep dipping until you had the thickness that you were looking for that candle. And then, of course, the length of the candle would be determined by the length of the wick. So here at the village, we have our large candle vat where we would fill this with wax. We would hang wicks on here, and then we would just lower. And obviously our wax is hard now because the village isn't open today, but we would lower that into the hot wax. We'd pull it back up. We'd actually have some pieces that would fit across here, and that's where the wicks would hang. You can kind of see the grooves there, where we'd put some wooden rods in there, and we could dip those down, pull them up, and then we would have our candles there made at the candle shop. So back here, this is another way of making candles. These are candle molds. So these would have been made by the tinsmith. You would put your wicks inside of each of these spaces, and then you would fill those. And actually, we have a wick in one of them here. So you would just put your wicks down in there. And those candles have been just very slightly dipped so far. And those would have been made with that dipping style. Okay. But here, we would have our candle mold. You'd put your wick in the mold, fill these holes with wax, let that harden, and then you would remove the candles, and you would have a nice molded candle like this. Okay. Back here we have some different candles of different lengths as well, or different widths. So those would have been made using that apparatus that you were just shown. Okay. Start out looking more like this, and eventually get thicker. Okay. There's a different size as well. So many different sizes of candles that would be made here at the candle shop. Make sure you visit when you're at Old Bedford Village, and we sell our candles as well. Children have the chance that they can actually dip a candle and make one by hand themselves. So that's always something that children enjoy and look forward to as well. So thank you so much. Our next stop on our tour is the apothecary. Now, you may have never heard of an apothecary, but if we enter this building, as you see the sign here, and sign making was a very important trade as well, we see here a mortar and pestle. And you may have seen these symbols before on a drugstore, and that's what an apothecary really is. It's the drugstore for the village. So let's go ahead in and take a look at the apothecary. Now here you see all manners of medicines, liquids, and powders, and all kinds of things that could have been used to treat a variety of ailments. We have some antique wheelchairs here, and all kinds of things as you look around here. So there's so many things to see. And many of these medicines would have been made using different herbs. So the medicines here would have been made from plants. And we actually have over here then Some examples of that. And actually, in the early days, Coca-Cola was originally considered a medicine. So was Dr. Pepper. They prescribed different times a day. Dr. Pepper's, one of their early slogans was drink some at 10, 2, and 4. But here we see the apothecary's garden. Some things that you're probably familiar with from cooking. Basil, it says there, the leaves were applied to bee stings to draw out the venom or the poisons. When mixed with shoeblack, it was believed to remove warts. So there's all kinds of things there. Dill seeds were boiled and used for digestive problems. You've all probably had dill pickles, but the dill that's used to flavor those now was once used as a medicine as well. Garlic was used as a remedy for many things. Many people believe garlic could cure all kinds of things. Lavender was used as a tonic in lotions and baths. Some people still use it that way today. So all kinds. Mint, the mint leaves were used to treat upset stomachs and sore mouths. Parsley was used to open liver obstructions and was thought to prevent baldness if you turned it into a powder and rubbed it on your head 3 nights a year. So all kinds of cool things there, ways that these plants were used. Some of them were ways that settlers learned from speaking to the Native Americans, what some of these native plants were used for, and some of those methods as well. So this is the apothecary shop here at Old Bedford Village, and I hope you visit when you come to see us. Off in the distance there, you see the Egolf farmhouse. We have our leather goods store. Here we are at Dumpert's Leather Shop, and leather was a very important good in colonial times. Many things could be made from leather, especially clothing, but also equipment for your animals, certainly shoes. So many things were used or were made from leather. And if we take a look here around, you can see some of those items: harnesses and bridles for the horses. We have shoelaces back here that could be used for a variety of things. Leather ropes or leather strings. Saddles, very important for transportation as well. So many things would have been made from leather. Among those things would have also been, of course, our shoes. Now, colonial shoes were straight-lasted. That means they were both cut to the same shape. It wasn't until later that they came out with shoes that could fit the left and right foot. The shoemaker, the leather worker, would measure your feet, decide the right size shoes for you, and that's what you'd have. Leather all started the same way. It all started as animal hide. So this is the hide drying so that it could then be have the fur removed and then be used and turned into leather. It would be done through a process called tanning, where it would be soaked in a mixture of chemicals and then stretched and pulled and kneaded and turned into leather. Depending on what kind of leather you needed, you'd knead it more, pull it more to make it softer, or you'd keep it firm and hard to maybe make something more like a shoe or a sole for a shoe. So lots of uses for leather. Be sure when you come to the village that you visit our leather shop. And our trading post there in the corner. Off in the distance, you see our stables, our chicken coop where we keep our animals. The animals are very popular among our young visitors. Hello here to Miss Nikki. Miss Nikki's one of our large horses here at the village. Beautiful creatures. Horses would have been used long ago for many purposes. Nikki is a farm horse, a workhorse, so she'd have been used to help plow the fields, but other horses would have been used for transportation as well and travel. The animals were a very important part of a village and a very important part of your home living in colonial times. Over here we also have our chickens, as well as some goats. Goat milk and goat cheese would have been popular. You might also see at other places, you might see pigs raised by settlers, sheep raised for their wool. So animals were a very important part of life. They were a necessary part of your life if you were going to live in this time period. Here's a closer look at our chickens. Okay. And of course, chickens provided meat and eggs, just as they do today. And then around here, and And our animals are always popular among our guests, especially our young guests. Over here we have our goat family. They're a little lonesome. They haven't seen folks in a while. There's the young goats. Of course, spring is the season for those little babies to be born. So make sure you come visit the village, come see our animals, and be sure to say hello. We have our basket making shop here as well. And you can buy a little kit to weave your own basket at our gift shop in the visitor center. And then we come to a place where you don't want to find yourself, and that is the village jail. Now, even though the spelling on the sign looks a little strange, it was still pronounced jail. So same pronunciation. We have our pillory here where somebody might be put to be publicly shamed. Nowadays, it's more common as a place for a fun photo op. And then inside, we do have some jail cells that you'll be able to see when you visit our village as well. Much like the preacher, the judge would have been a circuit judge who would have been riding from town to town. So you might have had to wait a while to be put on trial. So this is where you might be kept until the judge could get to you. Next door to that, we have our general store. Now, general stores were more than just a store. They were your gathering places. This is where you would meet up with other people from the community, share the latest news and gossip from around town, as well as make some purchases. General stores often had what was called a false front. So if you've ever heard the expression of putting up a front, that's what we see here, because it made the store look a little taller and more impressive, but there's really nothing behind it. So that's the idea there of that piece on the roof of our general store. And you can come here on a day when the village is open to enjoy some penny candy, some other treats, some soda in a glass bottle, all kinds of yummy, delicious things that you can enjoy here from our general store. One of the most important jobs in a village would be the job of the village blacksmith, and this is our blacksmith shop. We are very fortunate at Old Bedford Village to have a master blacksmith who does a lot of the work in our village for us and makes a lot of the things that you see around the village. His name is Dave Pettit, and if you come to our village, you want to make sure you talk to Mr. Pettit because he is a wealth of knowledge about the blacksmith trade. In here you would see all the tools of the blacksmith, and blacksmiths could make all sorts of things. They would make things out of iron, which is where the term blacksmith comes from. Iron is a black metal. So they would take that iron and they would heat it, hammer it to shape it into a variety of things. The phrase strike while the iron is hot means doing things at the right time, and it comes from the blacksmithing trade. Blacksmiths would make tools, they would make kitchen utensils, they would make door hinges and door handles and all kinds of things you couldn't even imagine. Nowadays, a lot of things are made out of plastic. Well, in our time, those things would have had to have been made of wood or iron in most cases, and iron would last longer, be more durable. So if you had a blacksmith in your village, you were very fortunate, and you would definitely want to stop here when you can come back when the village is open so that you can enjoy the sounds, the smells. It's a multi-sensory experience to walk into this blacksmith shop when Dave has his forge running, and you can really enjoy that experience. So be sure you don't miss the blacksmith shop on your trip to Old Bedford Village. Next, we have our gunsmith shop. The gunsmith would, of course, be responsible for making the guns and weapons that help to feed families and defend your homes. So you can come in there and see some of the gun making equipment and some of those pieces as well. We have an old farmhouse here. In here we have displays about weaving and spinning. Our potter's shop, where you can often find Bob the Potter spinning his beautiful artwork, and he'll be happy to talk to you about his craft and his creations. And our tinsmith shop, where many creations are made out of tin. Things like plates and cups and lanterns. All sorts of materials could be made from tin. Since tin was a soft metal, it didn't need to be heated and shaped like the iron of the blacksmith. So the tinsmith could make things without that need for a fire. And many things were made of tin. Many things that today are made of plastic were once made of tin. We have our broom shop as well. American broom corn was a very popular product for a long time. And so we have our broom shop as well. So that brings us back to the entrance to our village. We hope someday soon you'll be able to come and take that walk for yourself and to enjoy the village and enjoy all that there is to learn here. We're sure you'll have a wonderful experience, and we can't wait to welcome you. Be sure to follow Old Bedford Village on Facebook so that you can keep track of all the special events and fun activities we have going on here throughout the year, as well as to be always informed about the latest news and happenings and goings on here at Old Bedford Village. We can't wait to see you. We hope you join us soon in person so that you can experience all of the joys of the village for yourself. Thank you so much for checking out this video, and have a wonderful day.